All that night, we're going to begin with a devotional reading that's going to introduce the passage of scripture we're going to be studying today, Exodus 14, the whole chapter. And we're going to be looking at what it meant by all that night. So I'll begin with a reading in a devotional book that was given to me 22 years ago today. And it was given to me by a pastor's wife. And it's the title of the devotional is Streams in the Desert by Elizabeth E. Cowman. Her and her husband were missionaries to China. And although it is fallen Protestantism, there's a lot of beautiful insights. This is a collection of beautiful inspirational poetry and writings and excerpts from the Bible. And it was compiled in the early 1900s while her husband was dying in China. And she was going through that period of caring for a very sick husband whom she loved and served faithfully with in China in the very early 1900s. And she compiled this devotional book thinking, who would ever want to read my collection of poems and scriptures and inspiration? And a lot of people, hundreds of thousands, have read from this devotional book, and it's been a great inspiration. So I'll begin our study today with a little devotional reading from this book, and it's for June 5th. Here we go. So it's actually the February 5th reading. Ye shall not go out with haste, Isaiah 52:12. I do not believe that we have begun to understand the marvelous power there is in stillness. We are in such a hurry, we must be doing, so that we are in danger of not giving God a chance to work. And you may depend upon it. God never says to us, stand still or sit still or be still, unless he is going to do something. This is our trouble in regard to our Christian life. We want to do something to be Christians when we need to let him work in us. Do you know how still you have to be when your likeness is being taken? Now, God has one eternal purpose concerning us, and that is that we should be like his Son. And in order that this may be so, we must be passive. We hear so much about activity. Maybe we need to know what it is to be quiet. And then this poem. Now, I'll stop here and say this poem has much meaning to me. When she gave me the book, I was very, very ill at the time. I had had a brain infection. I was about to go to Canada for hyperbaric treatment. I had started to lose brain functioning, and it was a very kind of rapid loss of cognitive functioning. It got to the point I didn't know how old I was, who the president was, who my husband was. You could take your hand, run it in front of my face, no response. And that was the beginning when she gave me this devotional. And she gave me this particular poem because I was in this place of being so sick and not knowing what to do. Sit still, my daughter, just sit calmly still, nor deem these days, these waiting days, as ill. The one who loves thee best, who plans thy way, hath not forgotten thy great need today. And if he waits, 'tis sure he waits to prove to thee his tender child, his heart's deep love. Sit still, my daughter, just sit calmly still. Thou longest much to know thy dear Lord's will, while anxious thoughts would almost steal their way, corrodingly within, because of his delay. Persuade thyself in simple faith to rest, that he who knows and loves will do the best. Sit still, my daughter, just sit calmly still, nor move one step, not even one, until his way hath opened. Then, then how sweet, how glad thy heart, then how swift thy feet. Thy inner being then, then how strong, and waiting days not counted then too long. Sit still, my daughter, just sit calmly still. What higher service couldst thou for him fill? 'Tis hard, yes, but choicest things must cost. For lack of losing all, how much is lost? 'Tis hard, 'tis true, but then he giveth grace to count the hardest spot the sweetest place. So we're going to just kind of highlight this little part here where it says, sit still, my daughter, nor move one step, not even one, until his way hath opened. So now we're going to turn into our Bibles, and I'm going to read the entire chapter 14. This is a really good chapter. It will inspire us, make us cheer. Oh, if we should have such faith. We will need such faith for what is coming. So this is why we study this. Chapter 14 of Exodus. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon, before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, They are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, for the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people, and they said, Why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? And he made ready his chariot, and he took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over every one of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them, and all the horses and all the chariots of Pharaoh's, and of his horsemen, and of his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord, and they said unto Moses, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt thus with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For if it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness? And Moses said unto the people, Fear ye not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, Ye shall see them again no more, forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel, that they go forward. But lift up thou thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. And I will get me honor upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gotten me honor upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the angel of God went before the camp of Israel, removed and went before them and behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud of darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all that night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses and his chariots and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily. So that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength. When the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon the dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. And Israel saw that great work which the Lord did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. Amen. Now I'm bookending our beautiful study, and then we'll open up and talk about it. Now I'm going to read that passage, the last one in the devotional for today. Exodus 14:21. The Lord caused the sea to go back all that night. In this verse, there is a comforting message showing how God works in the dark. The real work of God for the children of Israel was not when they awakened and found that they could get over the Red Sea, but it was all that night. So there may be a great working in you, in your life, when it all seems dark and you cannot see or trace. But yet God is working. Just as truly did he work all that night as all the next day. The next day simply manifested what God had done during the night. Is there anyone reading these lines who may have gotten to a place where it seems dark? You believe to see, but ye are not seeing. In your life progress, there is not constant victory. The daily undisturbed communion is not there, and all seems dark. The Lord caused the sea to go back all that night. Do not forget that it was all that night. God works all the night until the light comes. Ye may not see it, but all that night in your life, as you believe God, he works. And then this beautiful little poem. All that night, the Lord was working in the tempest blast, working with the swelling current, flooding, flowing, free and fast. All that night, God's children waited, hearts perhaps in agony, with the enemy behind them and in front the cruel sea. All that night seemed blacker darkness than they ever saw before, though the light of God's own presence near them was and sheltered over. All that night, that weary vigil passed. The day at last did break, and they saw that God was working all that night a path to make. All that night, O child of sorrow, canst thou not thy heartbreak stay? Know thy God in darkest midnight works as well as in the day.